The recommendations page gives you a complete list of all the recommendations that are used all the way throughout the study, regardless of what deviation, regardless of which node that recommendation showed up in. And as you'll see here, you have a numbered list of all the recommendations that includes a range of additional items associated with those recommendations that you can track, such as the priority, who it's been assigned to, the status. And once again, if you go over to study data and you go over to recommendations, both PHA and LOPA are going to have the same basic types of recommendations available. You can alter what you want to see on that page. So this is a list of all of them. In addition to that, you'll see references to where that recommendation shows up, because there is a kind of a many-to-many relationship between scenarios and recommendations. So one scenario can have many recommendations. Similarly, one recommendation can show up in multiple different scenarios. So on this page, you're only going to have one instance of the recommendation along with a reference of where it's used. So you see here for recommendation 2, it's used in 3 different places. And also you're going to get the severity and the likelihood from PHA of the scenario that uses that recommendation, and that's going to help you in the risk ranking. Now you'll see that there are 2 separate lists. One is a list of recommendations that were generated during the PHA, and the other is a list of recommendations that were generated during the LOPA. Now if I go back to the PHA worksheet, you will see that there are recommendations, and I can add recommendations here. So what I can do when I add a recommendation, again, I press the plus button and I will type new recommendation. And when I do that, you'll see that it was number 26 because I created a new instance. If I go over to the recommendations page, you'll see down at 26, yes, indeed, a new recommendation was created. Now, if I want to delete the recommendation, I can just go back here to the recommendations page and click on the delete button, and that recommendation will go away and it will be removed from all of the locations where the recommendation was referenced. You should also note that you don't want to create a new recommendation entry for everywhere that you're creating a recommendation. A lot of times a recommendation is going to apply to multiple scenarios. So let's say I wanted to look at this recommendation of consider performing a LOPA, and I wanted it to apply to this next PHA scenario, which is related to the low pressure. I could simply start typing consider performing. So consider performing, and when I do that, it gives me a list of all of the existing recommendations that include that text. So I just click there, and instead of creating a new recommendation, it just basically references that existing recommendation, so that when I go into the recommendations list, you'll see that we didn't add a 26th scenario. I just am referencing that 25th scenario in 2 locations instead of 1 location. So that's how you're going to want to track your recommendations, and again, you can do that for recommendations generated from PHA or from the LOPA.